Okay, so continuing the circle equations, now that you know what the equation of the circle looks like, let's identify how to write an equation of a circle given some information. So I'm going to do a couple examples here, and I'll have you try maybe C on your own, okay? So let's say your center is 2, -3, and your radius is 5. Well, if I'm plugging in 2 and -3, that's going to be your h and k, and the radius, that 5, is going to be r. Then I'm going to go back to that equation. I'm going to write x minus 2 squared plus y minus -3 squared equals 5 squared. So I'm not changing, I'm just basically using the formula, and the minuses are going to stay put for now. But because this -3 was the k value, that's actually going to switch the sign there. So instead of saying y minus -3, you'd like to just say y plus 3. And we generally don't write 5 squared. We're going to write that as whatever 5 squared equals. So the simplified version to write that in is x minus 2 squared plus y plus 3 squared is equal to 25. Now you don't have to graph every single one of these, but you could put that in Desmos to see what that equation looks like. So I will do this one. Parentheses, just basically type it in Desmos as you see it. Be helpful if I was paying attention to what I was typing. And the center of the circle should be, if I do just a coordinate, 2, -3, right in the middle there. It appears like that it is. And to verify that the radius is 5, you just have to do some counting. So like if you look at here, I'm going from 2, -3 to 2, 2. That's 5 units up. -3 to the origin, or to the x-axis is 3 units, and then another 2 is going to give you 5. So that radius is 5. So we did that right. I'm not going to do those for every one of them, but just so you can see, you can check your work there. Let's look at letter B. So if I have the center of 0, 0, and the radius is square root of 3, again, I can go back to my formula, and I can say x minus 0 squared plus y minus 0 squared equals, the radius is the square root of 3, and then I'm going to square that. Always put the square when you're putting it into the equation. Well, again, we don't want these zeros here. So if it's 0, you're going to write x squared plus y squared. The square root of 3 is going to be a decimal, but if you square that, the square root and the square cancel each other out. So that's just going to become 3. Okay, you try this letter C on your own. Write your equation, pause the video, and once you think you got it, click the pause button again and let it play out. All right, hopefully you had a chance to try this out on your own. If the center is at -4, 0, then I'm going back into my equation. You'd say x minus -4 squared plus y minus 0 squared equals r squared. Well, I'm not given r, but what is the diameter? In a circle, the diameter is the complete distance across going through the center. So if I know my diameter is 16, then the radius should be half of that. So my radius is 8, and so I'm going to write 8 squared. So again, I don't want to deal with these double negatives, so I'm going to write x plus 4 squared. I don't want to deal with 0, so plus y squared. And I want to know what 8 squared, I want to know the number it equals. So 8 times 8 is going to be 64. That's the version you want to write when you write these equations out. Always simplify it. Now let's go the other way. So you can write an equation from the given information. Can you take an equation and identify parts from it? So now in these examples, you're given the equation. You want to identify the center from the equation and the radius. So let's start by getting the center first. You know, if you have x minus 4 squared, if you look at this equation, x minus h squared, fits perfectly with it. The center, the x part of the center is going to be 4. So h is going to equal 4. Since y doesn't have a number being added or subtracted to it, then the k value is going to be 0. So your center is going to be 4, 0. So we got that part. Now, to get from this number to the radius, recall that this is actually r squared, the radius squared. So if I want to know what the radius is, I'm going to set r squared equal to the number at the end. And you undo you get rid of a square by taking the square root. So the radius is going to be the square root of 95. Now that's going to give you a decimal. So it's preferred that you write it as the square root of 95. Now approximately, that's going to be 9 point something. It's okay to write an approximate value. SQRT, if you want a shortcut on Desmos, SQRT. 95 is approximately 9.74679. You round that how you feel appropriate. I would just say that's approximately 9.75. Call it a day. Put it as a square root though if you're gonna give an exact answer. All right, let's look at letter B. Okay, letter B has x squared. Well, like the y up here, there was no number being added or subtracted to it. So that h value, that the x value, the point of the center is going to be 0. This says y plus 6. Now this would be y minus k squared. But if it were a double negative, that would give you a plus. So in this case, k is going to end up being -6. We always want to switch the sign, basically, of what's inside the parentheses. So in this case, it was -4. That number became 4. In this case, it's +6. That number is going to become -6. So your center is going to be 0, -6. Now, as far as the ending number, 121 is a perfect square. Can you think of what that square roots to? You can check it on a calculator if you need to, but the radius squared is equal to 121. So the radius is the square root of 121. And that should be exactly 11. So no need to round or leave it as a square root in this case. You try this last one here. Pause the video and attempt it, and then you can check it with me. All right, we good? So let's look at what we have. We have numbers in both the parentheses. This one is +1/2. So our h value should be -1/2 because it's going to switch the sign. And this one is -20. So the k value is going to be +20. So your center would be -1/2 and 20. This number represents the radius squared. So the radius is going to be whatever the square root of 5 is. And we can approximate that or leave that as a square root, but your center will be -1/2, 20. Remember, that's a coordinate. And the radius can be left as the square root of 5, but if you want a decimal, that's approximately 2. Oh, I forget. Let's see, the square root of 5. Another way to get square root is to go into the keypad and do that button too. 2.236. So you can say it's approximately 2.236 or leave it as the square root of 5. So that's just playing around with the formula, using the equation, getting the center and radius, and writing the equation of a circle. The next video will be about graphing. Thanks for watching.